Hikaru, it was a mixed event for you. Some great games, some missed opportunities. How would you sum it up for yourself?
Yeah, I think obviously I didn't play particularly well. I'm not very happy with the quality of my play throughout the event. I think the score looks better than perhaps it should. Obviously, if I'd won the game against Fabiano, I would have had a chance to finish second in this event. So the quality wasn't great. The result was relatively acceptable, but mostly in this event, I was trying to experiment a bit. There were a couple openings I played. For example, with black, I just played this accelerated drag. There's hyper accelerated dragon every game. With white, I played this knight d5 line, which was sort of in the spirit of Daniel Naroditsky. So I was definitely experimenting a bit, as opposed to trying to play cutting edge mainline theory. But I think for me, the big takeaway is just that my time usage was not particularly good. There were many games here where I had opportunities, but sort of the flow of the timing, the moves wasn't great. So it was a very mixed event. But the fact that one game was basically the difference between third place and second, in spite of playing what I thought was very poorly, it's a positive note.
Which game, according to you, or which sort of match, two-game match, was the most exciting from your perspective, and you liked it the most?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge because the match against Magnus was very flat. I would say, with the exception of the second game yesterday. I know I lost the first one to him, but I mean, the only game that I really was excited by in that match was the second one yesterday.
It was
Dragon,
amazing, yeah.
Where I sacked the exchange. So like that game was very exciting and I enjoyed it, but the rest of the games were pretty mediocre, just not very interesting. The match against Fabi, I felt, was pretty much every other game. One of us would make a huge blunder and lose. Actually, I mean, today was, I think, symbolic of the whole thing, where the second game we played, I was much worse if not losing. Then Fabi blundered, then I was winning, then I was losing, then drawing, then everything in between. So actually, from the general standpoint, I would say that was probably the most exciting match for me. The match against Gukesh was also quite interesting. I think Gukesh has definitely improved quite a bit. Actually, if I look at the four players here, in my view, he's the only player who I got the sense was super serious and super well prepared, and taking every game very seriously. So he's definitely improving quite a bit. And I thought also in a couple of the games I had against him, he kind of let me off the hook. The game that I lost him, I shouldn't have lost, and there were probably 2 or 3 other games that I should have lost that I didn't lose. So, I mean, very strange in a sense. But for me, I would say that was probably the bright spot overall, was that Gukesh definitely is improving. I mean, as he should be. I mean, he's still quite young. So that was probably the only thing that really excited me about this event.
And also this game with Magnus that you pointed out, where you sacked the exchange on d8 and played rook d5, queen a3. It was so exciting. I thought maybe you're winning, but then I checked with the engine. It was only slightly better for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game is a perfect example of why these days I'm not particularly good in Rapid, and I'm probably very strong in Classical. In particular, Blitz, of course, whole different story, but because this was a game where I reached the right conclusions, but I was a little bit too slow reaching them. And I think in a Classical game, where I could have spent 10, 15, 20 minutes on a single move, I would have had a chance to win that game. But in a rapid game turning into a blitz game, I was just a little bit too slow finding the right moves, and ultimately the clock played a huge role in that game. So I think that game really highlights the difference between the formats, and why I still think I'm very strong in Classical. But in rapid, I would say I'm not quite as good.
And you said about knight d5 line, this 4 knights, and like a tribute to Daniel Naroditsky. Last game with Magnus, it seemed like you got a very nice position in that, right? With white, or you?
I mean, I think it's all just equal. I had looked at this. I mean, the only thing is he played king e7 instead of king c8, which I had looked at yesterday when I had prepared this line. So maybe there's some way to play for more as white. I mean, I'm kind of skeptical there really is. But it just felt like something fun to play. Obviously, in a more serious event, perhaps. I shouldn't phrase it like that. I'm probably because I don't want to diminish this event. But certainly in other events, I probably would not have tried to play this. But it just felt like a good time to experiment. And also because realistically, going to the last game, I mean, I know the commentators are trying to make it sound like I had some great chance to finish in second place. But it's kind of hard to envision Fabi losing the second game to Gukesh. If he does, he does. But it just felt like an opportune time. Also, I mean, I highly doubt I'll play this knight d5 ever again. So I thought it was a fitting tribute to play it one last time.
And lastly, I want to ask about Magnus. He kind of played really well on the third day, especially today, beating Gukesh 2-0 and Fabi 2-0. Do you feel like something about him that he's able to do really well? I think he just became a dad. He's not playing much yet. He could win this event. What are your thoughts about his play, like overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this unfortunate reality that Magnus is just very good at finding the best moves and being a very universal player. Ultimately, I don't think he's studying that much, but if he can just get a position, I mean, he is the best player in the world, and it's not really by accident that's the case. So his ability to create positions where players had to think, and then you have to try and find the right ideas, the right moves. He's incredibly good at that. And I think yesterday against me, actually, in the first game that we played, really highlighted that, because it was a position where he was a little bit worse. He was very low on time, but he was able to keep finding the best moves even with only like 5 or 10 seconds on the clock.
This Philidor game, right?
Yeah, it's Philidor game. So like the natural feel Magnus has is very good, and that's not something that he's just going to forget. I think the only thing is, as he gets older, obviously the brain doesn't work as quickly, and that probably will eventually catch up with him, just like it did with, say, Gary, for example. But still, at the moment, he's very good at finding moves in every type of position. So he's a deserving winner of the event.
And you had your team here, your family is here, Chris is here. How did that feel?
I think in general it's not that big of a deal, but one of the things, especially I would say in the last 2 years, not to sound kind of morose or really pessimistic, but one of the things I've realized in the last 2 years is I don't come to St. Louis that frequently, and a lot can happen in a couple of months. And so every time I've been coming here since about 2023, I always have this sense on the final day, like, it could be one of the last times I'm here. You never know if things are going to remain the same. So it's just a good reminder of, what matters in life. And hopefully everything will be the same when I come back, like in March. But again, in 6 months, a lot can happen. We saw what happened with Daniel, for example. There are other people that I know who went from being fine to suddenly having cancer and dying in the course of 1 or 2 months. So a lot can change, and I think it's just good to create memories and be around so many familiar faces, whether it's my family or all the staff and everybody else here in St. Louis.
That's very deep, Hikaru. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and
Sure.
good luck for the next event.
Thank you.